Salawat had a lot of effect in it. The topic that I had chosen for the 5 nights that I was initially called for, and then due to some reason the cancellations happened, and then 3 nights, was the traits of Ahl Dunya. And inshallah, I'll try and summarize those full 5 nights within these next 3 nights to the best of my ability. But if I'm unable to, then you'll forgive me, but I'll give you the reference as to where you can get the remaining information to be able to access it. But before that, the Ayam of Azar have passed us by. And we have reached and we commemorated the day of Arba'een. We saw the living miracle that is the land of Karbala. And every year we see this miracle grow in huge numbers. A city that does not house more than 1 million people. I think it's less than 1 million, the total population of Karbala. The infrastructure cannot handle 1 million people. It is a basic infrastructure. Less than 1 million people reside there throughout the year, but yet once a year, 17 million people descend upon that very same place that cannot house 1 million people, but yet 17 million people are there, 17 million people are eating, 17 million people are sleeping, they're showering, they're doing ziyarat, and not a single person is crushed. Not a single person is caught under a stampede, not a single person starves, not a single person is thirsty. That is the living miracle of Karbala. Why is it that Karbala is still remembered year in, year out, day in, day out by each and every one of the mu'mineen? Why is it that when you hear the name of Abi Abdullah, tears come to your eyes? Why is it that, leave aside the ma'sumeen, when you hear the name of John and John, the sacrifice that he gave by the side of Abu Abdullah, it brings tears to your eyes? What is that reason that caused their names to resonate throughout history? 1400 years later, or 1373 years later, you sit and you remember them as if that event had occurred yesterday. You have love within your hearts for those individuals that you have never even seen. Those individuals who potentially you've never even visited their graves. Maybe you haven't even read a book about their lives. All you've done is you've heard about some individual that stood in Karbala. There were 72 people that were with him and they gave their lives, they were massacred, but yet you cry for them as if it was your own family member that had been killed. Have we ever thought about why that is? The reason for it is that because Abu Abdullah and his companions gave everything for the sake of Allah, they fulfilled the ayah of the Holy Quran in Surah Maryam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ سَيَجْعَلُ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. That the person that does good actions, the one who has belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he does good actions, سَيَجْعَلُ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places their love in the hearts of the people. He inclines the heart towards that individual. So each and every one of us has that ability, that potential to be remembered after we die. To be remembered in a good way after we die. The requirement that is set out by Allah is that you obey His commands, you do good actions, and you have faith in Him. That is how He gives you a legacy. You don't create a legacy. If you chase the legacy, that is the wrong way to go about it. You chase the happiness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And through that happiness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises your station. He raises your status in His eyes, and by raising you towards Him, you become free of all of those chains that tie you down and hold you to this earth. Those chains that make you worried about what will happen to my children after me. Those chains that make you worried, but if I lost my job, how would my family survive? Those chains that make you think, but what will my wife say? Those chains that make you think, what will my community say if I break the mold and do something for the sake of Allah that the people are not used to seeing, the people are not used to hearing? What happens if I break that un-Islamic status quo? You see, it's these thoughts that tie us down. For people like myself who have to recite, should we say this in that community or should we not say it? Maybe they won't call me back again. And that's the disease within me. If I am reliant and I am thinking as a speaker, or as anyone, if I am reliant upon the people for anything, that's where I've gone wrong. See, reliance is solely and solely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when your reliance is upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you are able to achieve greatness. But when your reliance is upon man, upon the creation, and you leave the Creator, then you're unable to progress. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it within the Holy Quran in regards to hubb al-dunya, those people that chase their dunya. He says those that chase and desire their dunya, in one ayah of the Holy Quran, He says that they will be given their dunya. They will be given what they desire. But they have lost their akhirah. But those who chase their akhirah, Allah will give them both the dunya and the akhirah. Those that chase a higher goal, and the root of every single reservation that we have, every single second thought that we have, every single sin that we commit, every single bad thought we have about an individual, every word of ghibah that we utter, every lie that we tell, every time we miss a salah, every time we accuse others of doing things, each and every one of these sins, every time we do them, and even those things that we do not consider sins, every time we do them, it is paying witness to the fact that we have one disease that is causing all of these other diseases to occur. We're committing one major sin, and as a result of it, all the other sins circumambulate that one central sin. And what is that central sin? Hubb al-dunya. Love of the dunya. Attachment to the dunya. The Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, says, Hubb al-dunya ra'su kulli khati'. That the love of the dunya is the head, is the root of every single sin that you commit. Every time I commit a sin, I forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's because I love the dunya. Every time I give up my Islamic duty, for example, I give up paying khums. I know I have to pay khums. I know that I have the money to go on Hajj, but I don't want to spend that 2,000 or 3,000 pounds. I just don't want to spend it. because that disease of miserliness has entered into my soul. Every time I stay away from that and I disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is because of hubb al-dunya. It returns back to that essence, and that is the attachment to this world. An attachment to this world, or hubb al-dunya, is totally bad, but that does not mean that we live our lives in a state that we reject everything of the dunya. We walk around in clothes that are ripped and torn. We start living alone and not interacting with anyone, because that in itself is against Islam. And Amir al-Mu'mineen himself says to people, he says that you can't live like me. He heard someone say that the dunya is bad, and the dunya is this and it's that. And Amir al-Mu'mineen said to him that, why are you cursing the dunya? What did the dunya ever do to you? The dunya is not all bad. The dunya is given a number of similitudes throughout a hadith in the Quran. In one place, they say, "Ad-dunya mazra'atul akhirah." Your dunya is a bridge towards your akhirah. So do not set up shop upon the bridge, pass over it quickly. The dunya is a garden for your akhirah. You plant whatever you utilize this dunya, you plant things here so that it benefits you in the afterworld. Ad-dunya bahrun amiq. Luqman says to his son, Bunayya, Ad-dunya bahrun amiq. It is a deep sea. And within it, many have been destroyed. Many alam have been destroyed. The dunya will appear on the day of judgment as a very ugly, haggard old woman. And the people will be asked that, do you want to associate yourself or make friendship with this woman? And she will be so ugly and so repulsive that the people will turn around and say, Astaghfirullah, how could we ever make friendship with such an ugly thing, such an obscene thing? Because the dunya on that day will be wearing jewelry, it will be wearing excessively shiny clothing, it will have excessive beautification as an old person. But like a very old, ugly woman that's wearing lots of makeup, lots of jewelry, lots of very, very stylish clothing. And the people will say that, Na'udhu billah, we don't want to go anywhere near her. And the reply will come, but this is that same dunya that you chased after in the world. The external part of it, it attracted you, so you chased after it. But when you went to it zahir, when you went to what was inside, you realized that it was this old, haggard thing that could give you nothing. So the dunya has also been compared to an old woman. The dunya is simply the place where we live our life and we prepare for our akhirah. And within that, we are required to do our ibadat. That doesn't mean that we can't work. No, work is ibadat, going to school is ibadat, seeking knowledge is ibadat. All of that. So why is it that constantly throughout the ahadith and Quran, people are being cursed about being lovers of the dunya, if the dunya is not all bad? What is being cursed is attachment and excessive love to the dunya. Attachment to the dunya. And the example that I always give to see if we're attached to the dunya or we're attached to our akhirah is that imagine the feeling that you have when you're walking down the street and you go home, and when you get home you realize that you've dropped 10 pounds somewhere. Only 10 pounds. You've dropped 10 pounds somewhere. Or reduce that, you've dropped 5 pounds somewhere. And that feeling that you have, go back on your steps, you look back, you see if you found it, you've dropped 5 pounds somewhere, where is it? And that feeling that you have when you've dropped 5 pounds £10, £20, £30 or £100, you lose it. Compare that feeling with the feeling that you have when you wake up in the morning and you realize you've missed Salatul Fajr. If the feeling of that £5 or £10 is greater than that feeling of remorse that you have when you wake up in the morning knowing that you've missed Salatul Fajr and that money is more dear to you, then know that Hubb al-Dunya has taken root within your heart. If you go to work and for the sake of that money, they don't allow you to pray, you say, okay, I'll go home and pray qada. And for the sake of that paycheck, you just lower yourself, you humiliate yourself in order so that you may gain that paycheck, and I'll do qada of my salah, then Hubb al-Dunya has taken root within the heart. Hubb al-Dunya ra'su kulli khati'. Hubb al-Dunya is the root of all of that bad and that ill. So what are the traits of the people of the dunya? See, we've heard about those people who raise themselves towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, i.e. the Ahlul Bayt. When they raise their stations towards Allah, or when you raise your stations towards Allah, your status towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also recites your praise. See in Surah Al-Fajr, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna irji'i ila rabbiki radi'atan mardiyya. That, O the content soul, return to your Lord in the state that you are happy with His Lordship. But it says, radi'atan mardiyya. In the state that He is happy with your servitude. Only come back if you're happy with Him being your Lord and He has fulfilled the rights of Lordship. Then come back, because He is already satisfied with your servitude. He is satisfied with your servitude. Now you tell whether you are satisfied with His Lordship. And then if you are, then irji'i ila rabbiki radi'atan mardiyya. Then return back to your Lord. And then when a person reaches that status of nafs mutma'inna, then Allah, the malaika, they all sing His praises. When someone reaches that station, they say one day Rasool-e-Khuda came to the house of Sayyidah Zahra sallallahu alayha. Allahumma salli ala He comes into the house of Sayyidah and he says that, Fatima, I'm hungry, bring me something to eat. Sayyidah lowers her head. She says, Father, I'm ashamed, but we didn't have any money, so we were unable to buy any food to eat. They say at that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to save Sayyidah from embarrassment, ordered Jibreel, take down these dates of heaven and give them to Rasool-e-Khuda. Jibreel descends from the heaven and he presents Rasool-e-Khuda with a plate of dates from heaven. Rasulullah begins to consume the dates. The narration says that Imam Hassan looks towards Rasulullah and says, oh my grandfather, can I also have a date of heaven? Rasulullah takes the date, he places it in the mouth of Imam Hassan and he says, Hani'an laka ya Hassan. Imam Hussein, seeing this, comes forward and he says that, oh my grandfather, can I also have a date of heaven? Again, Rasool-e-Khuda places a date in the mouth of Imam al-Hussein. He says, Hani'an laka ya Hussein. Sayyidah sees it. She comes towards Rasool-e-Khuda. She says, Father, can I also have a date of heaven? Rasulullah places the date in her mouth. He says, Hani'an laki ya Fatima. Then he looks towards the corner of the room and he sees Amirul Mu'mineen standing. He says, Ali, come towards me. let me place one of the dates of heaven within your mouth. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes towards Rasool-e-Azam. Rasulullah places the date in the mouth of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now the body of Rasulullah begins to shake. His tears begin to flow. Sayyidah comes, she says, Father, why was it that when you placed it in the mouth of Hassan, you said, Hani'an laka ya Hassan. When you placed it in the mouth of Hussein, you said, Hani'an laka ya Hussein. When you placed it in the mouth, my mouth, you said, Hani'an laka ya Fatima. But yet when you placed it in the mouth of Abu Hassan, you began shaking, you began crying. He says, Fatima, when I placed it in the mouth of Hassan, the malaika of the heavens and the earth said, Hani'an laka ya Hassan. So I too said, Hani'an laka ya Hassan. When I placed it in the mouth of Hussein, the malaika of the heavens and the earth, they said, Hani'an laka ya Hussein. So I also said, Hani'an laka ya Hussein. When I placed it in your mouth, they repeated this again. So I again said this. But O Fatima, when I placed it within the mouth of Ali ibn Abi Talib, now neither the malaika of the earth said anything. The malaika of the heavens were also silent. But I heard the voice come from the arsh of Allah. Hani'an laka ya Abul Hassan wa ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. The voice of Allah himself came and said, Hani'an laka ya Ali. He says that, Oh Ali, let me put another one in your mouth. Let's see if again this voice comes. Again he places the date in the mouth of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now the voice comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh my Habib, you know how much I love Ali. If you placed 1,000 dates in the mouth of Ali, 1,000 times, I would say, Hani'an laka ya Ali, ya Abul Hassan wa ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. When a person raises themselves towards Allah and rejects attachment to this dunya, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts reciting their praise. The malaika starts reciting their praise. So what are the traits of Ahl al-Dunya? So that we may assess our own lives and see whether or not we possess those traits. And we've been fooling ourselves all this time, thinking that we are people who are working towards the Akhirah. The Holy Prophet goes on Mi'raj. When he reaches the 7th heaven, Sidratul Muntaha, Ka'ba Kawthain, Aw Adna, where the point where now Jibreel, Sayyidul Malaika, says, if I go any further, I will burn alive. This is where the Malakut end, and now man can go further. You see, this is why Amir al-Mu'mineen says, أَتَزْمَعَنَّكَ بِجَنٍ صَغِيرٍ. Do you consider yourself to be something insignificant? Within you there is Alim al-Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us as the greatest of creation, such that we can go to that place where even Jibreel cannot go, and where Jibreel to step forward even by an inch, he would set on fire and burn, be destroyed. But yet man has that ability to be able to go to that highest point. But he considers himself, or he busies himself fulfilling his animalistic desire, not wanting to ascend himself towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know if I said this point last time I was here, but if I did, then you'll forgive me. But if I didn't, it'll help put this next couple of days into perspective as well. When we think about our spiritual development, very often in the English language we use the term spiritual progression. And spiritual progression places within the minds of an individual a goal at a distance. When I progress towards something, I put a goal towards a distance. There's that corner, I need to go to that corner. So I work myself towards that corner. Sometimes when I don't reach it, I become despondent. And I become upset. And I think, oh, forget it. I'll just do what I was doing before. But instead now, there's no point trying so hard to reach that place. It's too far, I can't progress that far. Let's turn it on its head. The term spiritual progression is incorrect. The correct term should be spiritual regression. Because within us is the answer that we are seeking. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we want to make ourselves closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to raise our godly self, to make ourselves more godly, more like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such that He says in the Hadith al-Qudsi, O son of Adam, raise yourself, make yourself, and I will make you like me. That you say to something kun, and it will become. Raise yourself towards me. That is the extent that man can reach. But sometimes we think it's different. It's too difficult. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that is where you can reach. Spiritual regression is the correct term. The reason being because the essence of our existence is locked within us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within the Holy Quran at two places says upon the creation of man, نَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, I blew part of my soul within him. Meaning that godly nature exists within every individual. That godly nature exists within every individual. Now you take that one concept on one side, you look at the hadith now of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Man arafa nafsa faqad arafa rabbah. The one who understands himself has understood his Lord. Atazma'annaka bijirmun saghir. Do you consider yourself to be something insignificant? Within you is alim al-akbar. Do you not perceive that the cure to your illness is within you, but yet you are unable to perceive it? Why is it that Rasool-e-Khuda is saying that 70 years worth of meditation, 1 hour's worth of contemplation is equivalent to 70 years worth of ibadat? Because the secrets are held within you. When a person contemplates, he thinks about his own existence. When he thinks about his own existence, he automatically returns back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ruh that Allah blew into every man exists within each and every one of us. That was the ruh that was asked in Alam al-Dhar, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran says, we raised all of the children of Adam from the loins of Adam in their atomic form, and we asked them, Alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Lord? قالوا بلى, and they all said, yes, you are. Those souls that said yes, that was your conscience. You know when you feel bad about doing something that's wrong, that is that godly soul remembering the promise it made to Allah in Alam al-Dhar. So now, your job is not to progress, your job is to regress. Your essence is pure. That's why all of mankind was born on fitrah. We say all mankind was born on deen fitrah. Man has fitrah within him. Because it is that innate programming from that divine soul, that divine aspect within that individual. So we need to regress. How do we regress? See, the example that I give is in the days of old, not now, the old time cartoons that used to come on TV, and soon it'll make sense now as to why I'm talking about cartoons. But if you remember, there were two buildings. Sometimes there'd be a scene and there were washing lines in between it and clothes. And the character used to be on top of the building, and he used to fall from the building and get wrapped up in those clothes. Get wrapped, and he's hidden every one of the washing lines. So he's hitting each of those washing lines and he lands to the ground, he survives. Why? Because he's been wrapped up in all those clothes. His essence is inside, the true man is inside. But he can't get up because he's been wrapped up in all these various hijab, in all these various clothing. So he has to peel away each layer of this clothing in order to reveal his true essence. This is our example as well. In Alam al-Dhar, when we were created, we entered into this physical form. We fell through the realms of multiplicity into this realm of existence. We then carried on our existence, forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sinning, covering that soul, that divine essence with more and more hijab, such that we suppressed it. Our job, simple, is just to lift off all of those hijab that we put on it. Our job is to stop sinning, to do our wajibat. That removes one of the veils. We continue to remove those veils and we reveal our true essence, our true godly nature. That is what then allows us to ascend back to Allah. Because we are weighed down. In order to ascend, our soul to ascend, we need to shed weight. Physically and spiritually. We'll come to that. Actually, we'll come to that point now. When the Holy Prophet goes on Mi'raj, and he's at the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him, Ya Ahmed, because in the address within the heavens, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Holy Prophet as Ahmed. His name within the heavens was Ahmed. When he came upon the earth, it became Muhammad. So when he's in the heavens, Allah addresses him again with that heavenly name. He says, Ya Ahmed. And there are a number of different discourses that happen. It's a lengthy conversation. One part of it, Allah says, Ya Ahmed, أبغض الدنيا وأهلها. Hate the dunya and its people. Have bughd of the dunya and its people. وأحب الآخرة وأهلها. And love the people of the akhirah and love the akhirah. The Holy Prophet replies, Ya Allah, who are Ahl al-Dunya? What are the traits of the people of the dunya so that I may know them? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lists 20 such traits of the people of the dunya. I won't go through all 20, you'll be happy to know. Just through a couple in the time that I have left, or maybe one if we're lucky. And then inshallah in the coming nights we'll have a look as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Ahl dunya are those individuals who eat a lot, they sleep a lot, they are often angry, and they are they're not often happy. The first four traits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives about Ahl dunya. That they eat a lot, or they laugh a lot, they sleep a lot, they are always angry, and they are very rarely satisfied. First five. We'll look at one today, because the time is up, and then inshallah the rest we can try and look at tomorrow. In regards to that point on, we need to shed our weight. Spiritually, those things that have weighed our spirits down with our sin, with our forgetting Allah, but at the same time, linked to that is controlling what we eat. Controlling what goes in our stomach, the amount of food that we consume. All of this has an effect within our soul. And one of the worst things that an individual can do is fill his stomach to its full capacity. We have a number of ahadith that say if you want those individuals that fill their stomachs to the full, they fill it to its maximum capacity, they have not only damaged their soul, but they've also damaged their body. So, consumption of that food, being careful in regards to what we recite salah. So going forward very quickly, I had a number of hadiths, but I'm just going to go through one or two. That the Holy Prophet says that the individual that consumes excessive food, there are a number of things that happen to his self. The first thing is that his heart is poisoned with hardness. His heart becomes hard. He can't cry for Imam al-Hussein. He doesn't feel sorry for people. He doesn't feel upset about when he does something wrong. His heart, his esoteric self has become hardened. It's become suppressed. That fitrah has become suppressed. It also slows him down in performing acts of ita'ah, of obedience to Allah. It slows his limbs down from obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you think it is that within Shahr Ramadan we can all pray salah, we all stay awake, we pray salatul layl, we even pray our mustahabbat, we may pray salatul ghufayla, we start reciting Quran regularly, we start doing everything on time? Has anyone ever thought? It's not because shaitan is locked up. Let's just get that out of the way. That's not true. Not locked up. But it's the fact that the restriction of your food has allowed your godly self to manifest itself. Your soul that is more inclined towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now coming to the fore. You have polished that mirror of your soul. So now, the lack of consumption of food has given you that energy to be able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has given you that drive. It's totally opposite to how we perceive it. We think that we eat in order to gain energy. But it says no. The less you eat, the more energy you will have to do the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The less you eat, the more fervor you'll have within your ibadat. The more concentration you'll have. The more desire you'll have to stand in ibadat. It's not that in Shahr Ramadan there's some magical spell that comes down and everyone becomes a good Muslim. No, it's because we're restricting what we eat, we're fasting, and so as a result of it, we increase our closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the second thing that happens if he eats too much is that that individual becomes lazy in the acts of ibadat. The third thing that happens is that his soul becomes blocked from hearing good counsel. When someone tries to advise that individual, when someone tries to help that individual, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear good advice. They don't want to hear someone telling them, maybe you shouldn't have done this. Maybe you should have done it. They're not able to take criticism. Food has a big effect. I'll give you one story just to sort of... Ayatollah Mujtahidi Tehrani was saying in one of his durus in regards to one of the ulama, that he said that I went with the Maulana, the alim went to the house of one of the people from the Jamaat or wherever, and his kids started messing around in the house. And so that person says to the alim that, Maulana, why is it that when your kids come here, they mess around, but when our kids go to your house, they're perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. They act normal, they don't mess around, they don't swear, they don't do all of this stuff. They're not so boisterous, they're more relaxed. And even your kids are more relaxed in your house. But yet when you come to our house, our kids are messing around, and your kids are messing around as much as well. And the alim says, the difference is, when you come to our house, the food is totally halal. We guarantee that the food is halal, and so when your kids eat that, they have that effect of halal food within them, so they begin to act good. But when our kids come over here, there's something dodgy about your food, that when they're eating that haram, now these kids can't behave. And that is I said it and it was given as an anecdote, but it's a true story. When you see that your children are not behaving, they're not listening, you try and tell them and they're not obeying what you're saying to them, look towards the food that you're putting within their stomachs. Look at what they are eating. Because 9 times out of 10, it is the effect of that haram within their stomachs that is making them disrespectful, that is making them disobedient, that is making them not go and recite salah, that is making them not inclined towards ibadat. If I as a youth, now I realize one of the easiest ways, if we're regular with our salat al-fajr, one of the easiest ways to tell whether what you ate the night before was, that takeaway that you had the night before was a bit dodgy, whether it was halal or haram, see if you wake up for Salat al-Fajr the next morning. If you don't wake up for Salat al-Fajr, no, one of the potential reasons is what you ate the night before, its effect is being felt the day after, because you're unable to wake up for Salat al-Fajr. Something so small. It's fine, a Muslim tells you something is halal, it's halal. It's not, you're not getting gунah for it. But if it turns out to be haram, you still get a spiritual defect within you. And some say, how is that possible? That we get a spiritual, that's not fair, we didn't know. Why is it that we don't complain when we go and get food poisoning from somewhere that they don't give us properly cooked meat? Why don't I say, oh, why is it that I got food poisoning? That's not fair. Why did Allah make it happen like this? Because you said, no, look, because there's bacteria there, it was there, you consumed it, its effect is there. Exactly the same with your spirituality. Though the food may have been given to you as halal, but there may have been some haram mixed within it. And so as a result of that, now the very least is that your du'as are not being accepted for 40 days. The nur of your ibadat has gone. Until you burn off that haram that has entered within your body. Concentrating on what we eat is very important. Both in our spiritual and physical lives, but spiritual life more so. That's what we eat. We look at the lives of the Imams, we have guidelines from the 8th Imam, what foods to eat in what months, what foods to avoid in what months. Because that helps you towards Allah, don't overly eat. So one of the traits of Ahl al-Dunya is that they eat a lot. Inshallah, we'll carry this on tomorrow because there are a couple of hadiths that I wanted to go into in regards to the benefits of hunger. What can we gain by staying hungry often? Because by staying full a lot, it makes us lazy, makes our heart hard. But staying hungry has its benefits for us. And inshallah, tomorrow we will discuss it. As for tonight, we're here to remember the shahadat of that Imam whose akhlaq was considered to be one of the best of the people of his time. The akhlaq of Imam al-Hassan was considered to be the best of his time. The people would speak about his akhlaq. The people would acknowledge his akhlaq. Even to the extent that Imam al-Hassan, he's poisoned. He is unable to be buried next to Rasool-e-Khuda. They fire arrows into his body. They send his body back. The only individual to be given ghusl and kafan twice. But yet the akhlaq of Imam al-Hassan is such that many years later he appears in the dream of an alim. He says, "Oh alim, why did you not recite my greatest musibah?" On the day of the shahadat, the alim recited the shahadat of Imam al-Hassan. He says, "Why did you not recite my greatest musibah?" He says, "Imam, I recited that you were given poison and that poison, its effect was such that pieces of your liver began to come out every time you vomited. I recited that it was Zainab sitting by you, gathering the pieces of your liver and placing them within the tray. The Imam says, no, why did you not recite my greatest musibah? He says, Imam, I recited that they did not allow you to be buried next to Rasulullah. He says, no, why did you not recite my greatest musibah? He says, Imam, I recited that they fired arrows into your body and that again your body was taken back and given ghusl and kafan again. He says, no, why did you not recite my greatest musibah? He says, Imam, what is it that is your greatest musibah? The Imam says, tell the people that my greatest musibah was that I was at a young age and the Muslims came to the door of my mother Zahra. They set fire to the door of my mother Zahra. She stood behind the door pleading with them. When one mal'oon kicked the door, he crushed my mother between the wall and the door. And from that day on, Zahra would hold on to her side. She would go to the grave of her father and say, Subbat alayya masa'ibun law annaha Subbat ala al-ayyam sinna layaliya. Oh my father, these atrocities that have befallen me, were they to fall upon the brightest of days, they would have become the darkest of nights. That Zahra, that when Amir al-Mu'mineen is giving her ghusl, he comes out and he says to everyone, he says, do not cry loudly, so that the enemies of Zahra do not understand. The narration says that Imam al-Hassan and Imam al-Hussein were biting on their hands and trying to suppress their crying. In this whole state, they say the doors of the room opened again. Ali came out wailing loudly, crying, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. They said, Ya Ali, why is it that you are crying loudly? You told us to stay quiet. He says, today I have seen those wounds that Zahra had hidden from me. Today I have understood why it is that every time Zahra would stand, she would use the wall for support. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins. Pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive the sins of our parents. Oh Allah, those of our parents that are alive, give them long lives. Those of our parents that have left this world, give them a place next to Allah Muhammad in Jannah. Oh Allah, those who are ill, give them shifa'ah. Those who are in education, make them successful. Oh Allah, keep our ulama and our maraja at the head of our institutions. Oh Allah, keep safe the Shias of Ali Muhammad around the world. Oh Allah, destroy the enemies of Tashayyu, whichever guise they may be in, both inside us and those that are externally attacking Tashayyu. Oh Allah, destroy those enemies. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of the Imam of our time. Oh Allah, allow us to be amongst his true muntadhireen, his true waiters, for the acceptance of these du'as and any other du'as and the brothers and sisters have brought to the majlis. Please recite.